Now's not the time to mess me about. Hi, and welcome back to It's Not Rocket Science, 5 questions over coffee. I'm here with, this is my coffee, by the way. I'm here with Sharon. She has got coffee as well in front of her. Sharon Kennedy is a coach helping to develop future talent. She's works with people who are looking to develop high potential individuals in innovation, talent development, education. She's helping people build skills, confidence, and insight necessary to move in the fast-moving, high-growth sectors, particularly interested in people with neuro-inclusion in their development. So, Sharon, welcome to It's Not Rocket Science, 5 questions over coffee, and thanks for being a guest.
Thanks for having me.
Really so tell me a little. Terrific. Let's just explore a little bit. So, if we're looking at the sort of the person you're trying to help, what are the characteristics? What is it you would say are the sort of ideal client, ideal person you're trying to help with this neuro-inclusivity, building their confidence in this fast-paced environment of education and employment today?
Well, I suppose the first thing to say, and I understand why you've positioned it the way you have, but as much as I work on an individual level, I really come at it from a business level. That's what we're trying to achieve. And so the individual leader or individuals in the sort of leadership team are, generally speaking, going to be quite successful and achieving lots of great things, lots of ambition, lots of intelligence, capability, and things like that. It's more that they're at a point where it seems harder than it should be. And they're still pushing forward. And I think really, for me, what I try to do and we as a business is about helping them find alignment in what they're trying to achieve and how they're trying to achieve it. So it's more of a systemic approach that we take to it. So whilst all the things you described are exactly what we also do, clarity, confidence, talent, development, and the sort of candidate to company pathway and making that the optimum that it can be, ultimately we're about trying to make sure that we're helping leaderships and companies be more coherent in their approach so that the consistency is there and the inner alignment is there as well. So if you ask me about the type of people, they're going to be very intelligent, capable people, but they're just kind of, they know something's missing, but they can't really work out what that is. And so for us, it's normally sort of fragmentation in their thinking, really, and trying to help them sort of stand back sometimes and then look at things with fresh eyes.
So that's interesting. So tell me what they've tried before. What is it they've been attempting to do before they come across somebody like you can help them with that alignment? Have they done books, courses, all of the above?
All of that. And lived on the planet, and gained experience and done lots of things brilliantly right. And done lots of other things that they don't quite know why it's not worked. And I suppose it's sometimes it's like, we grow up hearing the adages of like, can't see the wood for the trees, or, you're in the trenches rather than and working in the business than on the business, all those great phrases. But I suppose actually sometimes it's about helping people sometimes to think differently when they don't know how to think differently. Because the old, I know I'm using the cliches, but the definition of insanity, keep doing the same thing, expect a different result. And I suppose all these phrases and words don't always mean very much until you actually get to the point of where the penny drops, somebody says something in a certain way or enough things happen, and you just kind of go, I get it now. That now makes sense to me in my way. And the problem is we all think differently. None of us think the same. None of us have got the same life experiences or talents or skills. We're all individual mashes of lots of life and experience and personality and DNA, and we're just unique individuals. And so what might be the penny dropping for one person is it happens in a different way for somebody else at a different time. So it really, I know that might sound a bit ambiguous, but I think it's a bit like, that's what I've learned through doing coaching a lot of the time, is the individual has to self-determine their own insight. All anybody else ever does is facilitate that being able to happen.
It's interesting. So there's a moment, there's a point at which something happens, whether that be a difficult situation or a sudden realization that you've been doing it wrong all this time, which produces that clarity of thought suddenly that I need help.
Yeah, I don't even think wrong is not, and I'm not picking, you're not being critical, but wrong isn't the right word, because I suppose it's just everything is trying, isn't it? All through our life, we're trying and we're experimenting, we're exploring, and we're doing things differently. I think it's just sometimes somebody can have those, whether you call them like light bulb moments or insights, whatever, fact bombs, whatever you want to call them. A number of things happen. Whether it's you read a piece of content, you have a conversation with someone, you watch something. Sometimes it's just enough things that happen relatively that your brain, our brains are amazing. I've done a lot of stuff around neuroscience, and, when we always think we have those light bulb moments, those light bulb moments are not just suddenly epiphanies. There are subconscious kind of going, I've maybe got the answer here. If you want to maybe sit down for a bit, do things a bit differently and listen to me, actually, and that's really what I help to sort of do as well. That's what coaching is, and that's what sort of like systems design is, and systems thinking, and sort of trying to get people to sort of sometimes stand back and just re-look at things with new perspectives, different perspectives, because it's really hard to do that, because we take comfort and confidence in familiarity and knowing what we've always done. And it might have always worked before, but we're in different times, and every so often you have to stand back and reappraise and reflect on what you have now, because it's a new world all the time, regularly. We're in another industrial revolution, or whatever you want to call it. So I think it is just having the confidence and being brave enough, really, sometimes to kind of go, is there maybe a different way to look at this?
So tell me, we've reached the sort of my third question then, and it's about the valuable advice that you'd give. So talk to me a little bit about two things, one of which is, so what do you do? How do you bring the outcome that those people are looking for? And secondly, is there a piece of valuable advice that you'd give to our listeners at the moment? And
yeah,
I'd welcome any comments from anybody either listening in the future at the recording or as we're listening to us live now. If you've got questions, let Sharon know what those questions are so that we can post them to her. But Sharon, start with that first thing. What is it you would actually do within your business, Engage and Prosper, to help them overcome that challenge?
So I suppose the first thing we do is have a proper conversation and explore really what is happening in their business, what frictions and areas they're finding either repeatedly failing or frustrating or just costly, or they'll know. Every business will have its own version of that, and it might be a number of them, it might just be one area. So we have really open, candid chat around structured chat, but it still is a chat, it is a conversation to understand and explore that, and it does require a bit of trust and openness, and it's obviously confidential. So that's the first thing we would do. If the next step is the right next step, we would run a benchmark, which is a diagnostic tool we use, which we've created around understanding the whole element of clarity in systems, people and behavior, because it is structural, as we say. But the sort of free advice, if you like, that I would say to anybody on that call or otherwise is to start thinking about where you're seeing repeated friction in the business, where things are, you're having to revisit them on a regular basis because you thought you dealt with them at that meeting, but something it's just not changed, or it's not landing, or people don't really know what they should be doing about what's been agreed. Because that's really, again, where the coherence is not really there. It's not landed, or it's not clear, or it's not being driven in a clear way. And again, it's quite difficult to give examples because that might be very different in every business, but it might be, a high turnover of staff for a particular type of role or a particular type of hire. So early career hires are regularly quite hard at the moment to sort of engage and onboard and successfully. Some of that might be because it's the wrong person and job fit. Some of it might be the job needs to evolve and move. And I think you've gone now, so I'm a little bit worried that you may have just disappeared. And if this is still live, no, you're there.
I was merely
It's a weird
focusing on you, Sharon, as you were
operation,
talking about such an intense subject. I wanted people to focus on you rather than seeing me
but
making
you didn't
goony.
tell me you were going to do it. Anyway, so that's really, so it could be at different stages of either people coming in, or it could be different systems that you're using. And again, with AI, oh my goodness, people are overwhelmed with it. I think they don't quite know in some organizations and businesses how much they should be using, what they should be using it for, how they should be using it and integrating it. So there are a whole plethora of areas and issues that could be the problem or the challenge for why the organization just isn't achieving what it knows it could and should. So I think that's really the sort of free advice that I would suggest, really. And it could be operational systems, team behavior, attitudes. I mean, coming from an employee engagement business and background, which I did for a long time, a lot of a tiny example would be about having behaviors on the wall and these great values as a company culture, and saying what it's like to work for us, and we're brilliant, and we're this and we're that, and all the great, honest, sincere things, but not necessarily living by those values, and it becomes a bit rhetoric rather than reality. So I think that's just one example of what I'm trying to convey, is that great intent and a great strategy written down isn't necessarily what the reality is or what the lived experience is. And I think ultimately that's really what we're trying to do, some audits, housekeeping, whatever you want to call it, and then really move forward with a really coherent plan, and also that individual congruence, so that internal alignment between what you want to be as a leader and as a business owner, and also what you are actually then delivering as a leadership team.
Brilliant. I will now come back into screen so that you can see me, but I wanted people to focus on you when you were talking about that, because I think it's important. Sharon, thank you. And just to remind people, you'll see at the bottom of the screen, I've put where we put our guests' contact details, their offers, things like landing pages where you can go and get free things from them in systemize.me/free-stuff. And we'll have links to Sharon's website, Engage and Prosper.
Yeah,
I've
got some downloads.
Got some downloads that we will be putting into our vault so that you can get hold of those and get and hear some of the great wisdom that Sharon has on this. So, Sharon, that kind of, you mentioned it once, and I presume it is from this background of employee engagement that you came to this realization. But it can't just have been employee engagement. There must have been a light bulb moment, a book, a course, a personal experience. What was it that sort of suddenly made you realize that some of this stuff is related to, these moments that sort of, you now can help to step in and to help people to understand better?
Yeah, I mean, I did do research around this question of, like, should I come up with a really clever author and things like that? And I did.
No, please.
There were loads.
Please don't do clever. We don't do clever.
Well, what I suppose I came down to really was the fact that, I'm the right side of 50, if that's the right phrase. But, I'm 52 now. And I think, I've had lots of chapters in my career, lots of working with lots of different, great bosses, great leaders. And either, been to events or been inspired to get inspired by people every day. And I suppose what I've recognized through my own observations, pattern recognition, whatever you want to call it, is that when leaders are sort of inconsistent, and it's hard to actually see consistency in someone if you're not seeing enough communication, interacting enough. It takes a long time to layer knowledge and understand who somebody is or what a business is and all those sort of things. So for me, it's about when things are fragmented. If leadership is fragmented, if how the business works is fragmented, how it communicates, how it does things. And and some people might use the word chaos, and I don't really mean chaos, because I'm not suggesting any business is chaotic. But I do think we think often it's more organized than it actually is, because a lot of things are tacit knowledge. Things just get done. We don't always know who does what until the person leaves that did it. So it's things like that, really. It's sometimes just having some order with some scope for creativity, innovation, all those sort of things. But for me, it's not one person, it's not one thing. There's some brilliant names I could drop. I mean, Rory Sutherland, I think, is just fabulous. Whenever the opposite of a great idea is another great idea. I think that, like, you just go around an eternal loop on that phrase alone. It just proves that there's never one right or wrong way of doing anything. There's many ways of doing it. Simon Sinek, he had big influence on me many years ago. Dan Pink, trying to think of one of the other big readers, and I can't think of his name now, one of the authors on marketing. His name's gone from me, but it might come back in a minute. But loads of people have really inspired me with what they've known, what they've seen, what they've realised. And I think really what really inspires me is human behaviour. So everybody inspires me because I get to see how they think, how they work, how they manage things, how they overcome things, and how they do things differently, because it's doing the different things that allow you then to do things differently, which I know might sound really obvious. But, other people being brave enough to do things differently allows you to recognise that there isn't a right or wrong. And so therefore, people can't really judge you for your approach because it's just how you think and what you're prepared to try. And sometimes happy accidents come out of that. And other times, I think Rory Sutherland gives an example of a bench, that when people sadly pass and people put a memorial bench there. And I'm not going to do his talk justice, but I recommend everyone watches it. And he talks about, where you do need a bench, there's never a bench, nobody ever sat there for a bench to then be put there, or things like that. But anyway, I'm not doing him justice, but he does, he thinks of some things in a very creative way. And I think it's that creativity that allows us to do things in a better way. Sometimes like brilliance, and sometimes it's a learning that we grow from, like in invention.
That's brilliant. Sharon, I guess I'm left with only one question, and it's the question that I often ask in this, which is, what is the question that I should have asked that I haven't yet? That the sort of killer question that brings it all together, which gives us a neat way of sort of trying to encapsulate all this. And I can't think of what that question is, so I guess I have to rely upon you to think about that question. So what's that killer question? What's that question I should have asked you, which I haven't yet? And obviously once you've asked the question, you better answer it for us, because I don't know the answer.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of it already, really. But I suppose the question was, how do you know when an organisation lacks coherence? And I suppose as a leader or a manager in it yourself, it's going to be when, some of what I've said before, when that issue just keeps coming back up, it's still not resolved, or the accountability for making it resolved and solved, it doesn't land. That person doesn't own it, or that team or department or whoever it is, supplier, whatever it might be, because obviously there's multi parts of a business running well and growing. It just could be a repetitive issue that you think has got fixed, and then it's back again. And if people are compensating, I think that's the real deep pit, isn't it? Some things actually work, but not through or without a lot of effort or a lot of being pulled out of shape and stress, a burnout, one of the big dashboard KPIs that most businesses always look at is absenteeism, sickness, turnover. All those the stats are always normal ones to look at, but I suppose really it's about tenure and productivity for me. Are people staying because you're a good employer and it's all working relatively well, i.e. that it's in congruence for them as an individual working for your business, and as a company, are you in coherence with how you should be and could be operating? So that those KPIs, are actually in a good balance. It's never going to be a perfect world, but if you keep having to revisit the same stuff, something's not working. And I suppose it, and I'm making that sound really simple, because of course all those individuals are trying to resolve it, but there's obviously got to be a different way to attack it, because maybe, like with a lot of business development, when a client comes to you and says, this is our problem, it's normally something else that's actually the problem, not what they think it is. And that's because often they just don't get the time or the luxury to be able to sit back and actually look at things with fresh perspectives and ask different questions.
Yeah. Sharon, great perspective. Thank you so much for causing us to just stop for a moment and think about some of those things. And I encourage you, listening to the recording, drop into the comments below this your questions to Sharon. She will be able to get back to you and answer them, because I think that's important that you get questions like this answered. And from me, I just have one tiny little ask, and that is, if you've enjoyed this, and even if you haven't, excuse me, please go to www.systemize.me. That's systemise.me/subscribe. There's a simple form there that just gives you, asks you for your name, your email address, and that means you can get onto the mailing list where I send out information about who's coming up in this week's podcast recording, and you can get it then. And you also get the copy of the recording when it comes out. So, Sharon, excuse me again, thank you so much for just spending a few minutes with us now. We've had, would appear the people are now leaving the live recording, so they have had their questions answered, which is important. Thank you so much for spending a few minutes with us. I look forward to seeing you answer those questions that come in on the chat below the podcast. So thank you for spending some time with us.
Thanks for having me, Stuart. I really enjoyed it.